one service that I'll talk to you about for a minute. The gentleman was KIA, and that's military terminology for killed in action.
Amen.
But he was killed in action in World War II. So he dies in World War II in the Battle of Bata. He is buried over there in a cemetery that they basically buried all the troops that got killed right there. He's buried there.
Oh yeah, buffet style. They put a bunch of them in one spot.
They would just dig graves. And they had this protocol that they did, and they had government issued raincoats, and they'd wrap the body up in the raincoat and they'd bury it, and then they'd move on to their next battle or whatever. Well, there's organizations out there that are going through and trying to find all these soldiers and bring them back to their homes.
Wow.
So, sure enough, I get a call from a family, and they have been in touch with one of these organizations, and they have found the remains of a guy from our town at Bata. So what they did was they disinterred his body and flew it to Hawaii. And in Hawaii, they matched the DNA for him to one of his nieces. They matched that DNA to confirm that it was him. And then we started making the arrangements to get him back here. So, of course, they booked the flight, and they said, okay, he's going to arrive in Nashville at such and such day at such and such time.
So you guys show up at the airport?
So we show up at the airport with the family and everything else, meet with the airport police at Nashville. And
where do they come through? Baggage come? Just a large item like the golf bags?
Well, they travel underneath. They travel underneath on the plane. But when I was dealing with the airline, the airline's like, now what's going to happen is we're going to go out there and we're going to bring his body here, and you can, the family can receive the body at the here at baggage claim, or actually it's kind of like air cargo.
Oh yeah.
And then the head of the airport police, he showed up, and I started talking to him. He said, these are the cargo people. He said, I'm in charge. He said, you want to go out to meet the plane? I said, yeah, I want to go out to meet the plane. He said, well, put everybody in your vehicles and we'll go out and meet the plane. And so they brought airport vans and everything else, and we drove the hearse and everything out to the tarmac.
Wow.
They brought the, and because we had, this was pre-COVID, so we had a full detail of Army men there, and they received the casket, right off the plane, carried him to the hearse, and it was a big deal, real emotional. They had everybody in the area, like in the terminal, come to the glass windows, and they all watched it, and they were all holding flags and everything else as they brought the body to the hearse. And then after that, then we brought him all the way back from out of the tarmac back to Hopkinsville.
And how big was he?
Well, they had him in a full-size casket.
Oh, damn.
Because what they did was they chronicled.
That's a large.
They chronicled everything that they had.
And do you believe it was really him or not?
I do. They had it down to, they had every one of his bones except for one. They had it all laid out. They had all the DNA. They had everything about him they had in this book that they gave to the families and everything else. So we're coming back, we've got police escorts all the way from Nashville, all the way, to the Kentucky state line. And that's when the Tennessee people broke off. And then when we got to Christian County, the sheriff's department was there waiting on us. And I bet you they had about 8 units there.
Damn.
And then when we got to the city of Hopkinsville, the city was there, and the community came out big for it. And the fire truck, they took the big boom ladder and everything else, and they had huge American flag draped that we drove under and everything else.
Damn.
And we took him out to
shit.
We took him out to the local cemetery that his parents were buried at.
Wow.
All his brothers were buried there, and we buried him there.
That's
I mean,
magical.
we even had the PGR there, and the PGR is another group that we work with occasionally. And what they are is they're the Patriot Guard Riders, and they're motorcycle guys, and most of them are veterans and everything else. But they really got a lot of notoriety back when there was that group from Kansas that was going around protesting military funerals. You could call the PGR.
And they'd show up?
And they would show up. And so what they would do is they would ride their motorcycles, with the funeral. And when, like, if you were coming up to the cemetery or whatever, and there was the protesters, they'd stop right there in front of the protesters and rev those motorcycles up. You drive right on by, and you never could hear the protesters.
Oh, wow.
And so
that's really magical. People come out to support veterans,
Yeah.
It means a lot to people, especially to those families, especially getting to be back with your family. I think just have your resting place back with your family is something beautiful about that.
Good evening, good afternoon, and other times. Thanks for watching that video you just saw. I mean, it was okay. But the next video you could watch could be way better. What if you watch a video right now that changes your life? Well, you could watch this one, or watch this one. Watch this one, watch this one, watch this one. Ah!